Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we're going to talk about anemia. And if you don't know, I'm still dealing with battling an aggressive cancer, and I'm possibly clear. I'm going to find out hopefully tomorrow, which obviously won't mean anything if you're listening to this, but it's possible that I'm going to find out I'm cancer-free very shortly. I'm hoping, obviously, that to be the case. But one of the byproducts or collateral incidents of both the cancer and the treatment is anemia. I've been dealing with this now for, I don't know, going on 3 months. And I've been slowly making progress, but I really want to talk about it because as we're going through life and we discover sets of problems and we learn how to resolve them, that gives us the tools to help others. And so that's my hope, is that I can help some of you possibly avoid anemia, and if you're dealing with it, how to resolve it without any drastic or toxic measures. So first of all, what is anemia? Anemia is a medical condition characterized by a decrease in the number of red blood cells or a reduction of hemoglobin, which is the protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen to the body's tissues, or both. In my case, it was both. Ultimately, what happens is you have an insufficient oxygen delivery to the body's organs and tissues, and you end up with a variety of symptoms. And let's talk about those. So, again, there can be any number of symptoms, but some of the common ones are fatigue, which I've been dealing with, weakness, hand strength has been diminished, just doing normal tasks that normally I can do for, hours, getting tired out pretty quickly. Pale or yellowish skin, I didn't deal with that. Probably maybe a little pale, I guess. Shortness of breath, again, that comes along with being tired. You get winded easily. Dizziness or lightheadedness, I've been dealing with that. It's crazy. Like I'm a little seasick or maybe even a little drunk without the fun part. Wake up in the middle of the night, head off to the bathroom, and you just next thing you know, you're slamming into a wall. You're like, whoa, I forgot how to walk. Cold hands and feet, that's been brutal. Even neuropathy, where I've been dealing with quite a bit, which is numbness and sort of tingling pain that goes along with it. And really the worst part about it is I kind of forget where my feet are. So I find myself tripping over things, bumping into things. And it's just been a real pain. You can also get chest pain in severe cases, which fortunately I haven't had, maybe a little teeny bit. But yeah, this is really a potentially pretty serious deal. Now, there's a lot of different types of anemia. So let's just get into that quickly. There's iron deficiency anemia, which is the most common type of anemia. So it's caused by a lack of iron, and that iron is essential for hemoglobin production. Blood has a metallic taste to it. If you ever have purposely or accidentally tasted blood, and I'm sure that's because of all the iron that's in it. Vitamin deficiency, you can definitely, that can be a contributing factor, or it can be a cause a causal factor, and typically vitamin B12 and folate are the instigators. So you got to make sure you keep up on your B12 and folate, which is kind of issue because with cancer, B12 and folate are not necessarily your friend. So this is one of these issues with me that, the double-edged sword of things. Sometimes my diet can have issues, even though it's, keeping the cancer minimalized or gone. It also has its negative side effects that I have to deal with. Um, Anemia can come as a result of chronic disease, different infections, inflammatory diseases, or malignancies. We'll get into that a little bit, but even cancer can cause anemia. So think about it. You get a disease that attacks your systems or weakens you in a number of ways. Well, it makes sense that one of the side effects of that might be diminishing ability to create these red blood cells and hemoglobin. There's also aplastic anemia, which is rare, but it's a situation where the bone marrow fails to produce sufficient blood cells. There's hemolytic anemia, and this is a result of premature destruction of red blood cells, which can come from various reasons, including autoimmune diseases, genetic disorders. And then there's sickle cell anemia, which is a genetic form of anemia, which is caused by abnormal hemoglobin that leads to misshaped or sickle-shaped red blood cells that can obstruct the blood flow. So figure that most red blood cells are round, and they pass through your blood vessels pretty easily. When they're sickle shaped, they can jam up, create like a log jam, and have issues. Um, so how do you know if, sometimes you're just feeling a little weak, or maybe you're feeling a little dizzy, or why don't you have one of these symptoms? How would you know that it's anemia? Generally you're going to take a blood test, and with me, with my cancer treatment, I'm getting blood work done all the time. So that's actually how I learned that that's what I was dealing with. A doctor obviously figured it out and prescribed a folate vitamin B, but I have chosen not to take it, and I'm dealing with it with natural supplements and my diet instead. So we'll get into that a little bit. Um, so treatment, obviously, if you have low iron as a primary cause of a problem, then we need to get iron in you. So um, there's iron supplements. There are um, B12 and folate supplements, as I described, which was prescribed for me. There are different medications and therapies for obviously chronic diseases or hemolytic anemia. In real severe cases, blood transfusions or other procedures can be used to stimulate red blood cell production. But really, I think your diet is going to be the best way forward to deal with it. How are we going to prevent anemia? I look at a problem and you say, okay, well, if I got it, I got to solve it. But if I don't have it, or if I'm prone to it, is there a way to mitigate my chance of getting it, or to, just maybe eliminate it? Your diet is so important in your health. We talk about diet from every kind of angle, and I'm going to keep talking about diet because I think it's, one of the most important pillars. Your diet is your nutrition, it's your hydration, it's your supplementation, it's your medication, it's so many things.
Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters, and for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
So if your diet is well balanced and you've got enough iron and vitamins and other nutrients, probably your best way to keep it from happening. Obviously, some of these factors like disease or treatments or, some of the other ways that you get it can sort of supersede that. But I think your diet is definitely, if you have a strong diet and you have another contributing factor, I think you're less likely to get it at least, or you're not likely to get it as bad. So my anemia was really bad for a period of time, and it's been very slowly getting better. And I have been taking a supplement called Floravite, and it has iron and B12 and a number of other herbs in it. And I take that twice a day. I was taking it originally once a day, but now I've upped it to twice a day. And then I drink hot lemonade with blackstrap molasses, and that's another way to get iron into you. We're going to talk about the whole vitamin C element to it. So this is, what I've been doing at very least. But your diet again is really, really huge. Blood loss can be a problem, and it can contribute to nutritional deficiencies. So if somebody's a hemophiliac or has a serious injury, loses a lot of blood, heavy menstruation, gastrointestinal bleeding, there's a lot of reasons. Even things like celiac disease or Crohn's, where you have dietary malabsorption, where your body just isn't taking nutrients the way it's supposed to. These can all be attributed to, or can contribute to nutritional deficiencies. Vitamin B12 deficiency is definitely an issue. And this is one of these things that vegetarians and vegans deal with pretty regularly. So, I have primarily a vegan diet right now, and I have to be very careful about making sure I get enough of certain vitamins and minerals because some things just don't come in plants very well or very effective or very completely. And you just have to figure it out. How am I going to get this? You have to be aware of it, and you have to take action that overcomes this. Folate deficiency is another, nutritional deficiency, and this is important for DNA synthesis and cell division. And once again, this can come from dietary problems, malabsorption, even alcoholism and consuming certain medications. So this is definitely, something to consider. Chronic diseases, this is something that we talked about a little bit, but chronic inflammatory diseases can interfere with iron metabolism, like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, chronic infections. Um, and so this can be contributing factors. Cancer, most definitely, and the effects of the treatments like chemotherapy um, really attacks the bone marrow. Sometimes a lot of blood loss and all of that. Bone marrow and blood disorders as well can be certainly contributing factors. Leukemia is a blood disease, and my myelodysplastic syndromes, which I don't know what it is, but myelofibrosis can also disrupt blood cell production and lead to anemia. Um, Autoimmune disorders. This is something that you hear a lot about lately. More and more autoimmune diseases where your body starts attacking itself. What a nightmare, right? I mean, you have this great immune system whose job it is to knock out pathogens, infections, and do it, take care of problems, and then all of a sudden it starts seeing your own healthy cells as a problem and starts attacking, and then you got to deal with that. So these are all issues. Obviously, inherited disease, conditions like sickle cell disease, and there's a few others that really you can't do much about other than, try to treat it. Certain infections can also be problematic this way. Um, and even medications, there's so many issues with our modern medical system in the sense of, we're so drug centric. A doctor, whatever problem you have, a doctor's going to say, well, we're going to prescribe a drug for it. And then that drug is going to have, you know, an effect that you want, and maybe it has an effect that you don't want. And just about every drug, it seems, has a side effect. And like, for example, for the chemotherapy, the drugs that they gave me had side effects. One of the side effects was nausea, really bad nausea, horrible nausea. So bad, sometimes I couldn't take a bite of something that normally would taste really great. And now it tastes like I can't even swallow it without wanting to throw up or without throwing up. So then they give you nausea medication. Okay, that stuff works pretty good, except for the next morning, you wake up and you've got the worst constipation you've ever had, and maybe a headache. Okay, so now I got to go and deal with that. And then there's a side effect from that. The next thing you know, you're on, a dozen medications trying to mitigate side effects from the original medication. And I talk about this all the time. It's just this constant cocktail that people take. And that's why generally I try to avoid pharmaceutical drugs whenever possible, because even sometimes when a natural solution maybe isn't as effective, generally it's also not as toxic and it doesn't have the same side effects. So sometimes you got to deal with, I could take a drug that's going to really knock it out, but then I got to go deal with this cascading um, cycle of side effects, and mitigating one, creating a second, mitigating that, creating a third, and just going on and on until finally you get it all enough under control, and you can, get up to a dozen different medications for that. I just think is really important. Um, Something like acute blood loss, that probably doesn't happen very often, but it could happen from trauma, it could happen from surgery, internal bleeding, and you can get anemia pretty quickly, but I suspect as the blood returns, you don't have that same problem of why is my body not making the blood? It just lost a lot of it. Now your body's got to replenish it. So whether you get a transfusion or a partial transfusion, or you just wait until your body reproduces, that blood, you'll be all right, probably quicker. Alcoholism is another thing, and probably other drug addictions can interfere with red blood cell production, and ultimately, a lot of it really just has to do with um, nutritional deficiencies. When you consume a lot of alcohol, it attacks your body in so many ways, and you can affect your bone marrow, you can affect your organs' ability to process nutrients. And so, you've got a lot of um, a lot of issues this way. So let's get into, what do you do? Whether it's preventing or treating, basically it's the same kind of answer, right? If I don't have it and I do these things, it'll keep me from having it. If I do have it, I do these things, it'll make it go away. So let's just look at it that way. Prevention and treatment being a very similar situation. So we're looking at a combination of dietary strategies, lifestyle changes, regular health monitoring. So again, we're going to come up with maintain a balanced diet. If you know you're prone to anemia, then let's focus on making sure we get enough iron-rich foods in our diet. And there's sources of heme iron, which are animal sources, non-heme iron, plant sources, red meat, poultry, fish, shellfish. These are all great heme iron sources. Non-heme iron sources, beans, lentils, spinach, things like fortified breads and cereals. They're going to put iron into it. I don't think that's really the best way. Nuts and seeds. Now, nuts and seeds are a double-edged sword. They've got some good. They also have issues. So those are really primary sources of iron. And, dark green leafy vegetables, spinach, collards, broccoli. There's a lot of, vegetables that do have iron in it, but really it's going to be your proteins is where it all comes from. And that's part of my problem is my diet is very protein lean, keeping the methionine out of my system. So I do take a medical food called Hominix that has all the aminos besides methionine, and it also has iron and a number of other vitamins and minerals. So I'm going at it from a lot of different directions, but my ability to eat a bunch of meat has more harm to me than the good it would do in producing the red blood cells and hemoglobin. Vitamin B12 sources, once again, meat, fish, dairy, fortified foods. If you're vegan or vegetarian, you might need to want to look into some supplements or, some different herbs and things like that where you can find it. Folate sources, leafy green vegetables, wonderful. Citrus fruits, beans, fortified grains. Again, I don't like the fortified grains. I don't like fortified bread. I don't like fortified, cereals and all that. I just think it's ridiculous. We should just eat the foods that have what we need in them without somebody squirting some synthetic vitamins all over the place. If you take iron supplements, a lot of times you just don't absorb the same. If you're eating spinach, if you're eating broccoli, if you're eating microgreens, huge way to move forward. microgreens are amazing. Um, your body's working with the entire process, all the different chemicals and vitamins and minerals that are present in these vegetables, these fruits, these foods, and your body's good at taking them apart. When you just get it in a pill and it's, the base molecules, for whatever reason, your body doesn't absorb the same way. So we can do some things to help enhance the absorption of iron. So there's a couple of things. In my blood test, I get, the red blood cell count, platelet count, hemoglobin count, and all that. But I also have the iron um, in my system, and also the ability to absorb it is somehow calculated through the blood test. So this is important because, once again, you can do things both to stimulate or retard your body's ability to absorb things. And, I work with CBD a lot, and that is helpful. Working with nanoparticles, that's another way that you can uh, increase bioavailability or absorption. There's lots of things that you can do, but with iron in particular, you mix it with vitamin C, and it enhances the absorption. So, for example, I'm right now, while I'm talking to you all, I'm drinking hot lemonade, which I grew the lemons. There's a little lime in it, and blackstrap molasses. Blackstrap molasses is basically it's the bottom of the barrel when they're producing molasses, and it's full of all kinds of um, vitamins, minerals, and especially iron. So when you pair the two together, the vitamin C from the lemon and lime and the blackstrap molasses, you have an increased amount of iron and your body can absorb it better. So just remember, if you're eating these foods rich in rich in iron, get some citrus, get some vitamin C, take a vitamin C pill, that or some kind of a tincture or elixir. Vitamin C is pretty well easily absorbed, so when you do take supplemental vitamin C, it absorbs pretty easily, so that's helpful. Another thing, try to avoid calcium intake when you're taking iron, because calcium can inhibit iron absorption. So we definitely want to take the vitamin C, and we want to avoid something like milk or other foods that have a lot of calcium. And this is something that's important. Hydration, this is something that we really want in all aspects of life. When your body is dehydrated, your blood gets thicker and doesn't flow as well. All the things don't work as well. When you are properly, and I know this because I'm sitting here getting blood drawn all the time now, and I watch other people. I look at my blood and see how it comes out, boop, goes right in there. And then you see other people's blood really super dark and slow and thick. You can tell. You're like, wow, that's very different from my blood. And so this is something that's important. I regular checkups is the thing that comes up. It's something that I never went to the doctor before, and then I get cancer. Now I'm at the doctor every other week, every other day sometimes. Um, Depending on your situation and your lifestyle, I think you can take care of yourself for the most part. But if you want to know what's going on in your blood, you got to get it tested. Now, you can go and get your own blood test. There's a lot of clinics and services that you can get your own blood tested. Things like this, I think, are easily done and don't require doctor's orders for. So, figure it out. You can go in and get just a physical, get some blood work done pretty easily and not too expensive. So maybe worth doing it a couple times a year, just see where you're at, especially as you're getting older. Um, Alcohol consumption. We have lived in an alcohol-centric world forever. Um, since people drank it to avoid getting waterborne diseases, um, human beings love alcohol, and alcohol causes a lot of problems. And people are starting to figure it out a little bit better. But excessive alcohol can interfere with red blood cell production and contribute to nutritional deficiencies. So if you're going to drink, you know, don't drink so much. And if you're going to drink, make sure you're eating better. I'm all about freedom. Do whatever you want to do, but just realize there are consequences to your actions. And when you do something like drinking alcohol, you got to take um, the appropriate actions to counteract the problems that the alcohol causes. Education, that's what this is all about. Um, I'm all about let's teach each other these problems. I never dealt with this before in my life. Now I have it, I'm learning it, I'm solving it, and I want to help others. So that's important. Medications, it's important. There's a PDR, physician's desk reference, that pretty much has information on every medication. And it talks about things like side effects and interactions with other medications. So, whatever medicine you're on, research it. Look at that thing and look it up and see what all it does. See how it works. We just listen to our doctor. The doctor says, take these pills 3 times a day, and you go to the damn pharmacy and get your pills and take them. You don't know what you're taking. You don't know what it's doing to you. You don't know why. None of it. We just do it. And I'm telling you, knowledge is power. If you're on prescriptions, learn what they do and learn if it's going to affect us in any way, shape, or form. Pregnant women, definitely monitor. You take care of yourself. Get your blood work done. If you are anemic, it's going to affect your baby, not just you. And so I believe pregnant women have a propensity to be anemic because you're going to need more iron and folate along just for growing that kid, making a new life form. You gotta up your intake of a lot of things. And so this is something that you want to be mindful of. If you're going to take iron supplements, read up on it. Again, you want to take it with some vitamin C. Do the things that are going to make it work better. You'll know, you know, if you're feeling weak, if you're feeling dizzy, if you're feeling cold, if you're feeling neuropathy, chest pains, all these symptoms, and you're taking your iron pills and you don't get a difference, well, guess what? It's probably not working. So do the work, do the research, and go at it with your diet if you can. I think that's really definitely your best way. For you vegans, eat some more beans, legumes, citrus fruit. Um, you know, for non-vegans, meat, fish, and dairy. You're going to get all the things you need that way. Important. Something like a blood transfusion, I think, is really reserved for the most severe cases. And, I don't would never want to get a blood transfusion. I don't think I've ever had to, but it can be a quick solution. And if things are bad and you're not responding to diet and some of the other uh, less invasive procedures, maybe that's what you need. Um, there are medications that stimulate erythropoiesis, ESAs, they call them. Medical terms, I don't know why they have to be so darn long and complicated, hard to, I guess it makes the doctors get to be smarter than us and they know the fancy words. But anyways, these might be prescribed for people that are dealing with things like kidney disease or going through, like I am, chemotherapy. They had me on a drug that stimulated my bone marrow to produce cells, and I thought it was mostly for white blood cells, but my current doctor said, well, if you take these drugs and you don't need them, then your body might decide, well, I don't need to do that work that I was doing because I've got the drugs helping me out. And so you can sometimes go backwards by taking a drug that you don't really, really need. And so my first 3 rounds with UCI, they gave me this drug after each round. And now I haven't taken it at all. Well, now I'm dealing with a little bit of anemia and I'm resolving it. But I think it's overall probably better than had I continue taking this drug, because what happens when my system decides, oh, I'm really not into making these cells anymore because I just used to getting this drug. I don't want to be dependent or find myself in a really bad spot because now I need this drug to exist and stay healthy. Um, Iron blockers limit the consumption of calcium and tannins. Tea and coffee um, around iron-rich meals. So if you're gonna be eating meat or dairy or some kind of iron-rich, maybe don't drink your coffee and tea along with it. It's just you gotta balance things out. Um, I think monitoring yourself, as much as I was always generally against it in the past, I think getting regular blood work done is not a bad idea for certain things. A basic panel, you can learn a lot. Now that I'm staring at blood work all the time, I'm like, well, shit. I If I have a spike or am deficient in something, it's a pretty easy way to nip something in the bud before you actually feel it. Because I don't know about you, but by the time I feel something wrong with my body, it's already pretty well bad. And, this is a good way to nip it in the bud, get it before it becomes a big problem. Your healthcare provider can work with you. And frankly, just like everything, the lesson here is do your work, do your research, pay attention to how you are, how you feel, pay attention to what you're eating, pay attention to what you're drinking. In this case, there's some very specific things to be mindful of. Pay attention to the symptoms that can show this. Get some blood work done. If you do, take a look at it, see what your red blood cell count, your hemoglobin, your platelets, your iron absorption, all those things. It can be a game changer. I don't think people generally die from anemia, but it can be a contributing factor for sure. And I'll tell you what, it's very inconvenient, very unpleasant, and it certainly does not help. So that's my thoughts on anemia. I really, hope you gain something from this. I think more than anything, let's live a balanced life. Be mindful of what we're doing, and do the research if you feel like there's something out of whack. This has been another episode of Healthy Living Podcast, brought to you by Willow Creek Springs. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine. I want to thank all of our listeners for making the show possible. Remember, we have subscription episodes, and you can support the show. If you like the show, tell people about it. The more we get listened to, the better it works. And really, it's just about building community, helping other people, and that's the way we do it. All right. Have a good day. We will see you next time.
This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.